And good morning. Welcome back to another edition of the PulseWave Report with yours truly, the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWave Trading, home of the world famous PulseWave Price Trigger Reports, the number one report in the world. If you're not using the PulseWave reports for your trading, what are you doing with your life? You're missing out. You're missing on these rally and crash alerts, so you don't know what's coming and you don't know what to do about it. Protect yourself. Get the post-wave price trigger reports so you can learn how to navigate these markets and protect your portfolio. And best of all, you can start building an income stream for yourself. All right. So, as you know, it is a very busy week this week with reports and the starts of earnings season. So you do know that as that kicks off, you add in the Fed speaking and all over the place. And yeah, that is a ripe condition for a little bit of volatility. So I'm not really expecting markets to do much. Like I said, I think we're going to be more so on the quiet end for pretty much just about everything. So I'm not really tripping over that at all. And you really shouldn't be either. You should be relaxed and not fretting because I really, like I said before, I really don't think you're going to see too much action. I don't believe we're going to see too much anything. I think it's going to be a very quiet week because we have too many very big reports that come out, toward the end of the week. And that's going to be a big deal. I don't see too many people position jockeying for position ahead of that freight train. I don't think anyone wants to step out in front of a freight train unless they have a death wish. So there may be a little bit of trading here and there, but for the most part, everybody is pretty much sitting on the sidelines, waiting to see which way the markets are going to break. And that is a wise approach, to be quite honest with you. If you don't see a trade, if there's no trade, you don't force one. Not in this environment, because too many things can happen and go wrong and hurt you. There's the unknown. You just don't know what you don't know. And that's the thing that can hurt you. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to the markets and it comes to trading or investing. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is a fast travel to the poorhouse. It's a speed train, locomotive. All right. So you want to avoid that. That's not a good idea. All right. It's not gambling. It's not a casino. If you want a casino, you need to go to Vegas. But these markets are not a casino. All right. Now that I've gotten that off of my chest, we need to talk. Okay. So it's looking like today that Bitcoin is doing exactly what I told you it was going to do. It's quieting down a little bit because I think we're going to start drifting. We're going to start consolidating between the 35,000 and 30,000 support zone. It's going to need to be built out. Do not be afraid or shocked if it even drops more and tests the 22 to 20,000 range, somewhere around there. All right, that 22,000, 20,000 major support zone could test it just to wash out the week longs, and then take off like a rocket. But either way, it's poised to take off like a rocket again. All right, so don't get it twisted. This could just be it. And the market could snap right back like a rubber band. So you don't want to be knocked out. Okay. No, risk is never eliminated. Risk is never eliminated. All right. There's no such thing as zero risk. All right. That would be a lie. All right. I don't care what the topic you're talking about. If it's the markets, if it's not the markets, there's no such thing as zero risk. There is always a possibility in these markets that you could be wrong, even if you're right. All right, just remember that. So you got to be prepared for all of these things. But no, I think that when you add in this all these factors of the Fed speaking in different places, different Fed personnel speaking around the globe, around the country, whatever. And then you got these government reports coming out, and you got earning season kicking off. All right. These are all market moving possible events. All right. So when you got, market moving events like that, you do have to be on your toes and be careful. Now, you still got to trade, still got to make money in these markets. All right. There's no such thing as not trading, but it doesn't mean you necessarily trade every day, but you don't sit on your hands. You don't make money sitting on your hands. So today is it's pretty busy as far as people speaking. The Atlanta Fed, you got Cleveland, Kansas, Boston. It's just a lot of things going on. Tomorrow, though, is the big boy, because you got core CPI and consumer price index and beige book. All right, so those are market moving events. The core CPI and the consumer price index, those are going to be market moving events. And then Thursday, the initial jobless claims, continuing claims. And then you got the import price index, and you got the Boston Fed, Atlanta Fed, and Dallas Fed, and Jerome Powell all speaking. All right, so Thursday is going to be a packed day. And then, of course, Friday is the big boy. You got retail sales. You got the producer price index, the Empire State Index. You got industrial production, capacity utilization, consumer sentiment. All of these are coming out within the first hour of the opening bell. So that's a lot. And the retail sales and producer price index and Empire State Index, all those are coming out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then at 9:15, industrial production capacity utilization at 9:15. And then the big boy, the consumer sentiment index at 10 a.m. Oh, this is Eastern Standard Time. So it's a full week. Do what you do. But I think today's the last day to do anything. If there's going to be any price action, it'll be today, ahead of Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. You know what I mean? So, yep. Once we get to Wednesday, that's when stuff really starts to happening. Not to mention, like I said, you got earnings, man. All right, these earnings are not to be trifled with. Earnings can surprise you. A company can come out of nowhere and say, "Hey, we're going out of business." Then what? See what I'm saying? So you just don't know what you don't know. So do what you do. Navigate the markets. Use the pulse waves. You're going to be fine. You're going to be all right. Use the pop method. You're going to be all right. Okay? But just know that you got these issues going on this week. Okay? All right. So some things that people are talking about. And they're talking about how we woke up this morning to the Great Purge. We got Twitter suspending more than 70,000 accounts since Friday. That's a lot of accounts. So you can throw freedom of speech out the window. I think it's time that the people stood up and had their own platform. I think it's time that people left Facebook, left all the big name social media outfits, because right now they have a monopoly. And we know that they all work together and move together. They make decisions together unanimously. So the Twitter and the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world, that's a monopoly. Why isn't there any competition? Why do you only have, like 5 companies and that's it? In any other industry, you don't see that. In any other industry, you see dozens of companies, if not hundreds of companies, if not thousands of companies. Why is it that these handful of companies control 100% of the social media out there? I think the people need to have a voice. They need to have their own platforms that do not censor, that allows for free speech. And it's like it's almost like they have a stranglehold on that aspect of the economy. Because if they want to attack all the little guys, if they don't just outright buy you, then they just go ahead and lawsuit you to death. They'll line up a whole bunch of lawsuits and they'll just sue you into oblivion, or you'll be forced to sell to them, or you just go away. So they won't allow anyone else to play in the space, and that shouldn't be allowed either. But this is what we are, ladies and gentlemen. We've woken up to 1984. Oh, you thought when we said Happy New Year, it was 2021. No, we're in 1984. All right, we rolled back. All right, we've jumped back several decades. We're in 1984 now. All right. And when you woke up to a new world. Okay. And now we have the pandemic industrial complex. Who knew that would be a thing in 1984? Well, if official numbers are to be believed, the United States is one of the worst hit countries in terms of the virus infections and deaths. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, at the time that we're talking, there's about 19 million virus cases with an alleged 300,000 plus deaths, suggesting between 1 to 2% chance of dying from said virus if you're infected by it. So it has a 98% survival rate, recovery rate, but it's being called a pandemic. However, these numbers are problematic even before questioning the validity of the statistics themselves leading to said numbers. For example, asymptomatic cases will likely go both untested and unreported, meaning many more people are actually being infected, exhibiting no symptoms, receiving no treatment, and most certainly not making it to the CDC's cases statistics. So this means that your chances of being infected by the virus and dying are actually much, much less than the often touted claim of 1 to 2%. Only those who exhibit severe enough symptoms to be tested and or treated will make it into the statistics of cases. Now, in terms of framing any pandemic, scamdemic, an exaggeration of the lethality of the virus becomes a fundamental issue. Now, if this information by itself is carelessly or dishonestly presented to the public without mention of the many more people likely being infected and exhibiting no symptoms at all, panic can and clearly has been spread across society and the world, enabling extreme policies to glide through approval, beginning the process of disfigurement of society, and now we are suffering for it. Now, this was a fact highlighted by the work of Dr. John Leonidas, who even at the onset of the virus attempted to raise the alarm about needlessly stoking public hysteria. We're talking about fear porn on steroids. Now, the folly of driving public health policy without proper data and a catastrophic impact it will have and is now clearly having on society if this trend isn't reversed. Now, there was an interview conducted by Journeyman Pictures from April 2020, noted Dr. Leonidas breakdown of data and the results of his own studies conducted to illustrate exactly this perspective. His study included widespread serological antibody testing in Santa Clara County, California, to see how many individuals may have been infected by the virus, but simply never exhibited symptoms or symptoms serious enough to seek medical attention and be tested for the virus. Dr. Leonidas would also go further on to note Quote, if you compare the numbers that we estimate to have been infected, which vary from 48,000 to 81,000, versus the number of documented cases that would correspond to the same time horizon around April the 1st, when we had 956 cases documented in Santa Clara County, we realized that the number of infected people was somewhere between 50 and 85 times more compared to what we have thought, compared to what had been documented. Immediately, that means that the infection finality rate, the chance of dying, the probability of dying if you are infected, diminishes by 50 to 85 fold, because the denominator in the calculation becomes 50 to 85 fold bigger. If you take these numbers into account, they suggest that the infection fatality rate for this new virus is likely to be the same ballpark as seasonal influenza, end quote. Dr. Leonidas also noted that there was a large gradient regarding death rates based on age and underlying medical conditions, with the risk of death for people under 65 with no underlying medical conditions being virtually negligible. The need for wider testing to fully establish mature data sets, as Dr. Leonidas and his team at Stanford illustrated, the efforts to communicate to the public the difference between the infection fatality rate, or IFR, and the case fatality ratio, the CFR, have been neglected by the Western governments. Of course, they're going to neglect it, and even more so by the Western corporate media. In some cases, efforts appear to be being made to deliberately obfuscate or confuse this crucial information in order to continue stoking panic and hysteria. Again, fear porn. But in addition to this, there is the fact that governments, particularly in the West, have been caught using dubious or disorganized methods to tally the viral deaths, meaning that both IFR and CFR numbers could be easily skewed. For example, British state-funded media outlet the BBC in August of 2020, in an article titled C19, England Death Count Review Reduces UK Toll by 5,000. They would admit that. A review of how deaths from the virus are counted in England have reduced the UK death toll by more than 5,000 to 41,329, the government has announced. The article also noted that the new methodology for counting deaths means the total number of people in the UK who have died from the virus comes down from 46,706 to 41,329, which is a reduction of a whopping 12%. Now, the article revealed that Public Health England had included everyone who had tested positive for the virus, even if they died months afterwards, and their death may have had other causes. Similar statistical gymnastics are being performed in the US. Even the New York Times raised the issue fairly early on in the whole pandemic, and they had an article said it was labeled, "Is the virus death tally inflated? Here's why experts say no." Now, clearly inferring that there may be a problem with the official methodology, and went on to explain throughout the article how it is impossible to ever know, since accurate counts or even accurate systems to use in counting may not presently exist in the US. In other words, the current systems are less than perfect and vulnerable to systematic distortions in the presentation of data. Again, this is a fundamental issue when public health policy is based on the perceived severity of the epidemic. See what happens when you do these scamdemics? Based on what we're clearly misused and incomplete statistics, the US, the UK, and much of the Western Europe have led the world in stoking unprecedented hysteria, enforcing travel restrictions and lockdowns, including the closing of business and schools and grinding the economies of the world to a halt, either directly or indirectly, in a manner similar to with an impact much greater than the US-led global war on terror starting in 2001. Now, pressure from international organizations like the World Health Organization, using its UN-affiliated platform to declare a global scamdemic, along with Western governments and the corporations that dominate foreign and domestic policy, have created a global crisis, not in terms of human health, but in terms of socioeconomics. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is what it is. Now, businesses are closed, not because those who regularly run or patronize them are in hospital beds or dead, but by order of governments and with official policy backing from organizations like the WHO. The mainstream media has played a key role in this, not only repeating narratives provided by governments and healthcare institutions uncritically, but refusing to fulfill their role as watchdogs and investigators searching out impropriety. Now, in a state of hysteria that is crippling small and medium-sized businesses, but a boon to big business, again, who benefits? The mom and pops, they lose. The big businesses, they get bailout money. Now, headlines from papers like the Wall Street Journal, they do admit, all right, you got to remember, they do admit that big tech companies reap gains as the virus fuels shift in demand. Or as The Guardian reported, Amazon third quarter earnings soar as scamdemic sells triple profits, make it clear that some big businesses are profiting from the hysteria. Moreover, The Guardian report the mystery of which U.S. businesses are profiting from the virus bailout money reveals how struggling big businesses are being bailed out by government money, with the SME sector, the real pulse of any vibrant economy and society, is being left behind. But there is one industry who stands out above all others to benefit, an industry notorious for its deeply rooted corruption, and an industry that has already been caught using its ties with international organizations like the WHO to declare scamdemics, stoke hysteria, and profit handsomely from the resulting chaos. It's the West's pharmaceutical industrial complex. At no time in human history has it been more powerful and influential than it is now. And at no other time in human history has it been so dangerous. Big Pharma, the least trustworthy scamdemic partner. Western big pharma's profiteering and corruption under ordinary circumstances is already shocking. The current climate of public confusion, panic, and growing socioeconomic desperation only invites the industry's impropriety to new levels. Pharmaceutical corporations like Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Moderna, having received billions of dollars directly or indirectly from taxpayers who don't get any stocks in return to develop the viral vaccines, have long documented histories of corruption, including bribing regulators, doctors, and governments. Of course, this is being kept out of the media, isn't it? They don't want you focusing on that. And they even have been now given immunity by the world governments should anyone suffer any adverse reactions to said jabs. They have also been caught falsifying safety and efficacy data. They have promoted the use of their products for patients in cases not approved of by regulators, including on children. And let's not forget, Bayer was caught giving AIDS-infected medicine to countries overseas after they knew that it was tainted with it. They have even been caught knowingly selling products they knew were dangerous or even deadly, withholding critical information from both regulators and the public. Pfizer alone, as its virus vaccine began rolling out publicly, was under investigation this year, according to its own Security Exchange Commission SEC filing for its Greenstone generics businesses over antitrust concerns, for manufacturing issues regarding the Qualavant XR, regarding quality issues over the manufacturing of auto injectors, over corruption inquiries regarding its Russian and Chinese operations, and in regards to lawsuits in Mexico over the manufacturing of Zantac and a cancer-causing chemical called N-nitrosodiumethylamine, or NDMA, found in the product. The investigation regarding Zantac finally prompted the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, who had originally approved the drug, to request that it be pulled from the market after finding it is indeed linked to an increased likelihood of causing cancer. The Wall Street Journal in 2020 has an article titled, "Pfizer Receives Inquiry from the SEC Bribery Unit," would note that Pfizer's past scandals, that Pfizer has had past run-ins with U.S. authorities over allegations of bribery among its operations abroad. The company in 2012 agreed to pay $60.2 million to settle investigations by the SEC and the Justice Department into alleged violations of the SCPA in several countries in Europe and Asia, including China and Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, this is public information that you can look up yourself. The U.S. Department of Justice, in its own statement regarding part of the 2012 payout by Pfizer, would note, according to court documents, Pfizer HCP made a broad range of improper payments to numerous government officials in Bulgaria, Croatia, Kazakhstan, and Russia, including hospital administrators, members of regulatory and purchasing committees, and other healthcare professionals, and sought to improperly influence government decisions in these countries regarding the approval and registration of Pfizer Inc. products, the award of pharmaceutical tenders, and the level of sales of Pfizer Inc. products. According to court documents, Pfizer HCP had numerous mechanisms to improperly influence government officials, including sham consulting contracts and exclusive distribution and improper travel and cash payments. Such bribery might help explain why Pfizer and other pharmaceutical corporations are able to sell dangerous products like cancer-causing Zantac, or in the case of fellow vaccine producer Johnson & Johnson, cancer-causing baby powder, for years before mounting lawsuits and public outrage spur regulators to finally do their job properly. In Johnson & Johnson's case, a Reuters investigation would note, facing thousands of lawsuits alleging that its talc caused cancer, J&J insists on the safety and the purity of its iconic product. But internal documents examined by Reuters show that the company's powder was sometimes tainted with carcinogenic asbestos, and that Johnson & Johnson kept that information from regulators and the public. See what I am saying? To deliberately put out a product that you know is tainted with asbestos. As long as you don't get caught and you can make some money, right? What this illustrates is a consistent pattern of corruption stretching across Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson's manufacturing process to their business practices and spanning years. It is an entire industry that repeatedly engages in dangerous impropriety, is repeatedly investigated and fined, but allowed to not only continue conducting business, but are still entrusted with matters critical to public health care. Yes, indeed, they have now been given by the government, they have been given immunity from prosecution for their virus jab. Now, the implications of this has the process of developing, approving, producing, and distributing vaccines for viruses, which should be obvious at this point. Despite the immense amount of publicly known corruption engaged in by the Western pharmaceutical industrial complex and the obviously troubling implications it has for the current viral vaccine rollout, it is only one dimension of a much wider problem. All right, so that's just the tip of the spear. There's also the Western pharmaceutical industrial complex known history of creating public scares to attract massive government contracts and wield power and influence over public discourse regarding human healthcare issues. The same large corporate media outlets today helping fuel public hysteria regarding the virus and promoting Big Pharma's vaccine rollout had previously reported on past instances of Big Pharma crying pandemic using its influence over international organizations like the WHO and securing massive government contracts worth billions of dollars for unnecessary and ineffective medication and vaccines. Think back to 2009 and the H1N1 swine flu scare. Following the WHO's dramatic declaration of a global pandemic, the headlines and articles from the mainstream Western media read almost identical to those being circulated today regarding this virus. NPR in 2009 article would claim 7 months into the flu pandemic of 2009, North America leads the world in cases, the WHO says. Unlike elsewhere, the new H1N1 never exited stage left after its debut appearance in late April. In fact, it's making more noise than ever. Mexico has experienced more cases of pandemic flu since September than it did over the first 4 months of the pandemic this spring. And that's a quote from the NPR 2009 article. Now, the ratcheting up of hysteria continued both from the WHO and across the Western media, accompanied by drives to fund vaccine development and stockpile medication like Roche's Tamiflu. The UK Daily Mail in 2009 article titled Tamiflu, What You Must Know as Swine Flu Threatens to Strike, would claim. The government has announced that stocks of drugs known as antivirals to fight the imminent threat of a swine flu pandemic are being built up to cover more than 50 million people, or 80% of the country's population. But the hysteria faded. The truth emerged. Articles began to appear like this one from Reuters in 2014 titled, Stockpiles of Roche Tamiflu drug are a waste of money, review finds, which noted, researchers who have fought for years to get full data on Roche's flu medicine, Tamiflu, said on Thursday that governments who stockpile it are wasting billions of dollars on a drug whose effectiveness is in doubt. The article also pointed out Tamiflu sales hit almost $3 billion in 2009, mostly due to its use in the H1N1 flu pandemic, but they have since declined. There were also Roche's financial ties to WHO experts who designated the appearance of H1N1 as a pandemic, helping pave the way for the public hysteria required to fuel Roche's profits from selling what was essentially a useless drug to government stockpiles. The BBC, in their 2010 article, WHO swine flu experts linked with drug companies, would report, key scientists behind World Health Organization advice on stockpiling of pandemic flu drugs had financial ties with companies which stood to profit, an investigation has found. Roche was mentioned by name by the BBC, The advice prompted many countries around the world into buying up large stocks of Tamiflu made by Roche and Relenza manufactured by GlaxoSmithKline. Despite these revelations, post H1N1 after 2009, the very same actors have taken the stage for a repeat performance in 2020, with little to no alarm from the same media organizations who ignored the H1N1 heist in 2009 and reluctantly reported on it only long after the damage was already done. This is what you get, ladies and gentlemen. You get what you get. What about the big pharma's pandemic industrial complex? Well, over the past 10 years, big pharma's control over the WHO and its influence over both the media and Western governments has only grown. Powerful organizations like the Wellcome Trust, which claims to be an independent foundation funded through an investment portfolio, count several large pharmaceutical corporations, Novartis, Roche, Johnson & Johnson, and Abbott Labs on their list of significant directly held public equity holdings. Its governance includes representatives from the pharmaceutical industry, various Western governments, academia, the media, and of course, the WHO itself. No conflict of interest here. No, of course not. There's no conflict of interest. It is an institutionalization of the conflicting interests that have tolerated, accommodated, even helped expand the unwarranted power, wealth, influence, and corruption of Big Pharma. And while Wellcome Trust claims to be independent of corporate and government ties alongside the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it has helped create another front organization called the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, through which it accepts and disperses huge amounts of Western taxpayers' money. Yeah. The work of CEPI directly impacts the business prospects of many of the corporations Wellcome Trust owns stocks in, with its investment paying off above average amid the most recent round of public hysteria and government spending on the latest declared pandemic. International Publishers Limited, in an article titled "Wellcome Trust Prospers Under the Viral Fallout with 12.3% Return," would report. Wellcome Trust portfolio has not just survived, but prospered in the highly volatile environment following the viral outbreak, according to Eliza Manningham-Buller, the charity's chair, introducing its annual report which unveiled a 12.3% return for the year to 30 September of 2020, up on the 6.9% of the previous year. So almost double. The trust, which supports medical research worldwide, is the UK's largest charity with a £29.1 billion portfolio at the end of September 2020. And the Wellcome's investments have returned an average of 12.1% a year over the past decade. Consistent 12.1% over the past decade. So now you see how the pharmaceutical industrial complex have grown even more powerful. It's worth noting that back in March, both Wellcome and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation provided $125 million in seed funding to accelerate certain pharmaceutical products claiming to treat the virus, including Gilead Sciences' antiviral Remdesivir, despite failing repeatedly in clinical trials. And after the National Institute of Health, NIH, was exposed attempting to rewrite the rules in their attempt to salvage the drug's reputation as a viable therapeutic for the virus, Remdesivir has continually hyped in the media by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and NIH Director Anthony Fauci, and is still defended by the WHO to this day. To this day. It is also important to note that as of 2020, the number one funder of the World Health Organization is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who supplied the WHO with approximately $531 million in its 2018-2019 biennial budget, roughly 12% of WHO's total budget. Unlike the H1N1 scare and multiple scandals that emerged out from behind the smokescreen of public hysteria, deliberately created around it, the viral crisis has been sustained for now nearly a year, with enduring regimens being put in place to condition and control the public and to control the flow of information through traditional channels as well as online, and particularly across US-based social media platforms and direct public funding into the coffers of the healthcare and pharmaceutical industrial complex. At the same time, other major industries are either being spared the same regulations and restrictions, strangling smaller businesses out of existence, or being bailed out by public funding. It has gone from the H1N1 heist of 2009 to what appears to be a pandemic industrial complex taking shape today. That's right, in 2021, we woke up to the pandemic industrial complex, or PIC for short, PIC, acronym PIC, because they're picking your pockets clean. How far this has gone in shaping, or more accurately, disfiguring society is up to those people who can clearly see public and private sectors conspiring together and consisting of at least reliable partners of actually being taken on a real pandemic and protecting the public from it. If that is truly what we are facing, I believe it is one big giant conspiracy. On one hand, even if we believe that the statistics and claims being made on a daily basis by the mainstream media and government representatives, we can see for ourselves the corporations elected by the government to create the solutions claimed are needed to end the crisis are guilty of serial abuses, including the production and distribution of entirely unsafe products, products developed and approved of by government regulators under normal conditions that will go on to making people ill or even killing them. And this is pre 2020. But the COVID-19 vaccines being rolled out now aren't even going through that process. They have instead been rushed through approval, and unpredictable results and adverse effects are already emerging. It harkens back to another chapter involving a novel virus, 1976's swine flu, where vaccines were rushed into production and resulted in mounting adverse effects, particularly paralyzing Guillain-Barré syndrome in over 400 individuals. And these were only the cases that were reported, as the true total of those who suffered varying degrees of complications will never be fully known. In 1976, the vaccination program was abandoned and the government's response deemed a failure of historic proportions. But apparently the lessons learned then or in 2009 have been lost entirely today, and in some cases deliberately buried by a complicit media. If the CV-19 is the crisis we're told it is, why isn't there a greater demand for more trustworthy and transparent partners to work with to face it? These will be partners capable of acknowledging past mistakes and explaining how their plan today differs from those in the past. But unfortunately, history has already taught us that pandemics can be declared not because they actually exist and or pose a grave threat, as government, media, and corporate stakeholders claim, but because profits are to be made by big pharma in connection with those in organizations like the WHO, who have the unique power to declare pandemics and perpetuate them regardless of the truth. Again, conflict of interest. The WHO is receiving 12% at least of their funding from said pharmaceutical industrial complex. We watched for 2 decades as the West orchestrated an entirely false war on terror around the globe, justifying actions as extreme as invasions, wars, and illegal occupations of other countries, and the expenditure of trillions of dollars of taxpayers' money as they gobble up other countries' natural resources. Is it really that hard to imagine as possible this formula being reworked atop the 2009 H1N1 scandals and pushed forward aggressively today? Is it that hard to imagine, ladies and gentlemen? Really? It is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. You ain't got to like it, but you do have to acknowledge it. You got to deal with it. You can't run away from it, that's for sure. All right, so that's all I got. I just wanted to bring some things to your knowledge. Okay? Something to think about as you go about your day. And with that being said, remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back, and smash that like button if you want these live streams to continue. All right? Now, we're planning a live stream for you this coming Friday and next Monday. All right? So you definitely don't want to miss it. Go to PulseWaveTrading.com and you can get all the gory details. All right, I'm out. Peace.